Welcome, everybody, to the Buy Sell Chat webcast hosted by JT Capital. Today, we are going to talk about how tech is reshaping the real estate industry. My name's Puja, and I also have Packer here with me who's going to co-host. And our guest today is Sarah Randolph. She is the Director of Marketing Technology and manages all the digital platforms for RKW Residential. She is responsible for developing innovative strategies and specifically focused on generating qualified leads for each community. So welcome, Sarah. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks. Absolutely. Happy to be here.
So, before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit more about what you do at RKW?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So I started RKW about 6 years ago, and my background is actually in digital marketing. That's what I've been doing for most of my career. And I started as our digital marketing manager. But I found in that position, you are, leading the lead generation strategy. But I found myself really kind of digging into a lot of the platforms that we were using that at that in between stage between the marketing funnel and the leasing funnel. And I found myself being super nosy and wanting to know all of the ins and outs of how those platforms work, and more importantly, how they work together. So I've been in this role for about 3 years now, and I really help make sure that there is a solid understanding of what our MarTech stack is and how it plays nice with the rest of our tech stack, and staying on top of, as you can imagine, all the different developments that are happening in those softwares, making sure they align with our goals, making sure that there's an adoption across all of our leasing teams, and that these tools and platforms stay beneficial to our employees.
Fantastic. Thank you. Overall, just as we're looking from like an industry perspective, how advanced do you feel that real estate is with technology?
Well, I'm not going to be the first one to say this, so I don't feel too terrible, but I would say that we wouldn't be considered the most advanced when it comes to adopting technology, or more importantly, deploying it, utilizing it on a regular basis. But I heard someone say recently they really went through a decent metaphor that helped me and others fully understand why. If you think about multifamily and you think about the average amount of time it takes to find the land, figure out, do all of the development on the building, all of the construction, all of the leasing, it is an incredible amount of time to just get something built up the ground to be able to start leasing. And so somebody coming to a developer, a property manager, even myself, and saying, hey, we have this new technology that's been out for a year, we'd love for you to try it. In our industry, you want something with a little bit more time backing it, and you want the opportunity to test it. And I think it's made it so that it's just a little bit harder for everybody in multifamily to just straight up adopt a new technology. Also, I think at the end of the day, COVID really helped push everybody to adopt certain types of tech. I think self-guided tours is a big one, virtual tours, and out of that came this huge boom of vendors and platforms and offerings in the prop tech world. But we're finding now, after those few couple of years, it's now all about, how do you make all of those tools and platforms work together? How do you make sure that they all speak to one another, that the integrations are there, and they all have the data that is necessary? So I think recently there's been kind of maybe a step back from just adopting lots of different things. And at least at RKW, it's been more about, how do we make sure that, again, our tech stack makes sense and works together, and not only benefits our occupants, our clients, but also internally our employees.
No, absolutely. I think that one thing that you said that's really interesting is, there's all this technology that is probably coming out of COVID, but then we haven't tested it, or there's so many different platforms that then it kind of makes it very clunky, right? And we were talking earlier, right? And I feel like I allude to the healthcare industry, where I have prior experience in consulting, and there's just a huge technology gap. And then the same thing is that all these hospital systems nationwide can't talk to one another, and they're all using all these different platforms, and there's no good way to really communicate. And
Yeah.
so we're very advanced in technology in the sense that I think from a layman's perspective, we're always on our phones, we're always connected to the computer, but then there's still a lot of processes that are still very old school, or we haven't figured out a way to really make everything work. Like we're talking about AI and having computers do stuff for us, but there's still some of the basics that are missing.
Absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, our audiences has changed, right? The prospective renter has changed so much. And there is this expectation, like they use this tech all of the time, right? It's almost normal, like not just normal to them, but expected. So we've had to meet them in certain areas. I think it's why you've probably seen multifamily adopt technology more in the like lead nurturing CRM, that like leasing funnel type you know, there's probably been a quicker adoption there. But it's because our prospects, our renters expect it. So anyways, I think I definitely can, when you were describing the systems in the healthcare industry, not being able to talk to one another, I literally will joke around. I think my job exists because there started to be a thought process on the executive team at RKW and also a lot of different, of our clients, that integration was like a 4-letter word, and not having somebody that could really focus in and work with the different vendors to understand what integration actually means. Because from system to system, it could be totally two different things. So making sure that what I like to think of is like that there's some understanding of what your source of truth is and all of the different platforms that you want to play nice with that and pull from that. What does that mean? And what data is part of that sync or part of that feed, and just kind of taking it from there. But yes, it's a massive conversation. It's definitely a thought I have every day when dealing with all of our different vendor platforms.
Absolutely. Well, you talked a little bit about what you're doing with RKW and the platforms. So can you share a little bit about how RKW got into the technology space, or really just kind of the forefront from a property management perspective?
Yeah.
What tools are you guys using that differentiates from, all the other property management companies out there, and what makes it unique with the tech platform that you have?
Absolutely. I'm really lucky that I came into a company who already had the mindset of wanting to be tech forward. You'll hear our president say a lot, Marcy Williams, you'll hear her say, we are high tech and high touch. So there's a really good balance of, personal relationship with our prospects, our residents, our clients, keeping that personal connection there, but also utilizing technology to further that. So there's always been that mindset at RKW. But when our parent company, Alfred, acquired RKW a few years ago, being a tech company and being somebody that is very focused in on how technology can benefit this industry, improve and help this industry grow in terms of tech, has definitely been a fantastic thing for RKW to be able to be side by side with. And it's been a huge focus, I would say, for RKW to really streamline our tech stack. Being third-party property management means that there are going to be times where we are utilizing what I think of as like platforms, but a tool that is outside of our tech stack. But the more that we've started to streamline it, the better understanding we've been able to provide internally for ourselves, but also our clients, of why all of these tools are the best, our best practice. They are the tools that we should utilize, how they all work together. And it's also really helped not only streamline the tech, but also the training around it, the adoption on our on-site team side, as well as on our corporate side. It's made it a lot easier for everybody to grasp the purpose of these tools. So a big thing for 2024 for us was really refine and refocus. And at least for me, a big part of that was refine and refocus our tech stack.
And can you explain a little bit further for people, what encompasses your tech stack?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I'm using a lot of verbiage that, probably is RKW internal thing or industry thing. I'm just going to throw a few things out there that you're most commonly see in a multifamily management company, right? Your CRM, so your client relationship system, your PMS, your property management system. A lot of people are going to utilize, a revenue management system. A lot of people are going to have their websites. A lot of people are going to have their own internal analytics platform. A lot of people will have a self-guided tour platform. And on top of that, there's usually some type of smart home access control ecosystem, hopefully that works in hand with self-guided tours. Sorry, I'm kind of in marketing, particularly, since that's obviously my focus. There's a lot of tools that we use. So review management platforms, online listing platforms. So how do we control and help out with responding to reviews, and also control how your online presence looks and the data that gets pushed out? Surveys and your NPS scores. How do we help drive more communication and engagement and positive interactions with our prospects and residents through a platform, through a tool? Yeah, and I forgot my favorite, websites. Kind of that's where my background originally started too, property websites and our corporate site. So how all of those different platforms all play a part, usually in just a single asset should probably have all of those different tools set up for that team or that community.
And how difficult is it to set something like this up at a property? And do most properties use most of this technology, or what would you say? I mean, given COVID, I feel like people had to shift really quickly, but or if they do have it, do you think it's being used optimally?
In our portfolio, every single one of our properties utilizes 90% of that, if not more. And of course, as soon as I stop talking, I'm forgetting some of the big ones, right? Online leasing, that's been around for forever. Your feeds, specifically ILS feeds. Again, shout out to marketing. I got to give kind of my background there, but I would say, again, in our portfolio, it's a major part for every single one of our communities. But I think as a whole in the industry before COVID, you probably would have found that most people had a property management software, and that company, the vendor that they were utilizing, they were using some of the other products that fell under that umbrella. So maybe they had online leasing, maybe they had a CRM. A lot of companies utilized the PMS as a CRM. You saw some like pick and choose type situations, and really the big thing was making sure your property management software could be utilized for resident information, payments, and it connected to your financial suite. And what I saw happen, again, being in more of that marketing kind of world during COVID, was we had to figure out a way for our teams to still interact with our prospects when we couldn't be together. When our leasing teams were all working remote. So some of the things that RKW had already started implementing for some communities became a massive portfolio-wide rollout. You have things like just virtual tours. You've probably heard that for years, but all of a sudden it became a necessity. Somebody can't go tour that 2-bedroom apartment. So how are you going to show them what it looks like? Simple things like making sure that the CRM platform that we have available is now offering a tour scheduler that has both in-person tours and your self-guided tours integrated with it. There were just all these little things that I think really started to become a necessity during COVID. And now, at least at RKW, we're having the ability to, like I said earlier, really fine tune it, make sure that, number one, all of the platforms make sense. Sometimes you roll something out and you realize, is this making our team's lives harder? Is this something that we're not, when you go to measure success and try to understand why did I originally want to use that platform, are you realizing that's not the case? It's not being utilized like you thought. So that's actually been really helpful too, right? Being able to take the last year and a half to figure out that aspect of it, that aspect of our tech stack.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, I've asked a lot of questions, so I'll let Packer jump in.
Awesome. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Got it. Sorry about that. Speaking of tech, had to transition over to my phone. So
Right.
not sure why that didn't work, but have a number of resources available. So yeah, appreciate a lot of the things that you've shared just in regards to that. As Puja and I, we a couple months ago, we were interviewing several property management companies. We were very impressed with RKW, their tech stack, and then how they utilize that tech stack to make life easier for the on-site teams and then just provide a better experience for residents and prospects as well. One thing I like that you touched on was on virtual tours and how with COVID there was a shift where before that would be something maybe people were very averse to. You don't want people just coming on the property looking around without an employee showing them around. But how do you feel like tech has impacted those virtual tours and with augmented reality, and how has it shifted like property marketing efforts?
Yeah, I think it's kind of the question, I think, kind of combined two different things there: virtual tours and self-guided tours, which both are absolutely true in terms of in COVID. You probably saw it, absolutely in the marketing world, there just be like this sudden, oh my gosh, we need this. I would say before COVID, if you had asked some of the marketing managers I was working with how people saw virtual tours, it was like, oh, that could like be an added expense. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't just part of your natural, here's what we need to do to market your community. This is what you need. And now I think virtual tours are thought of in the same way that like photography is thought about, a property website is thought about. It's a must because not only are those virtual tours utilized for prospects while they're still shopping, but it's also then utilized throughout the whole experience for somebody in that leasing funnel. We found that people will tour multiple times in multiple ways, right? They're going to virtually tour first and then maybe go in person. The shopping experience, that what I think of as the marketing funnel, when someone maybe has just entered that leasing funnel, they've submitted a few forms for a few communities, has become a lot longer, actually, in my opinion. And there's so many more touch points that your average prospect will hit on before they ever are ready to speak to somebody. And that is a huge change for how we've always, I think our industry always have thought about our sales team and what their job is. Their job is to call every single person that, comes into the funnel, and just trying to utilize some of the tech that we now know helps prospects get questions answered and get a better idea of what the community is all about while they're still shopping. So virtual tours has been a huge part about that. Self-guided tours as well. I think one of the things that I continue to say, I did not make this up. This was Marcy Williams again. We have to meet the prospect or the resident where they want us to. So we're never going to become the company that says, that's it, hands off, no one's on site. We're not, there's no person talking to anyone anymore. It's all AI. That's never going to be us, because there's always going to be at least one person that wants to speak to our lovely property managers, right? There's always going to be that person. But on the flip side,
Absolutely.
there's going to be me. I don't want to speak to anybody. I want the opportunity to just kind of what I was saying. I want the opportunity to shop in my own way, get more information, and do it on my time, which, by the way, is usually after 8 p.m. So, in giving the tech to those prospects in the way that they want it, meeting them where they want to be met is incredibly important. And it kind of goes back to that, that phrase that, again, you'll hear a lot of people at RKW say, because it sums up how we view our tech stack, is how do you maintain that high tech, high touch mentality? And again, it's meeting people who want both sides of the coin.
Yeah, no, I love that perspective. I hadn't really thought about that, about meeting the prospect where they are, because you're going to have a wide variety, right, of people searching for communities. And I don't know if we'll ever get to the space where you won't have an on-site person, because that's something so essential where you're providing housing for people. But like you said, there's just such a wide variety of people today searching communities, and it really kind of can give you a good leg up on your competition if you have a good online presence and provide a good experience for someone. So if they see, your property online, they're already enticed to go check it out to kind of further their search. And I liked how you mentioned after 8 p.m., right? You're only going to be able to have so many hours, or on Sundays,
Yes.
for an example, but having a good online presence really can help you, further your net of what you're casting for potential prospects.
100%. And that was a big part of the reason why RKW first started getting into a tool that has an AI functionality aspect to it. Again, with COVID, there was this thought process of thinking about things a little bit differently, leasing a little bit differently. But even after we got out of that, when everybody realized, yeah, we were going to be able to go back on site, right? We were going to be able to be around each other again. There was still this need to meet the prospect, and honestly, even the residents sometimes, right? Like sometimes they have questions about, amenities even after they've moved in. Meeting them where they are when they want it, when they want to ask those questions or to get some answers. So we actually, started utilizing a CRM platform that has a virtual leasing assistant. And I think that this part of AI is actually something you've seen adopted by a lot of companies in multifamily, because that conversational AI we found it to be more not as scary. There's not a chance that it's going to kind of go off the rails, and a little bit more like maybe like a generative AI tool might. But anyways, we adopted having a VLA, a virtual leasing assistant. RKW's is named KIT, stands for Keep in Touch. And what we found is it goes hand in hand with that mentality, right? That high tech, high touch. Because when I'm on the website at 8 p.m. and I want to double check if they allow dogs, my dog Boone is over 55 pounds. Are they going to allow him here? I can start talking with the chatbot and it's going to interact with me. I don't have to wait the next day for the live agent to come back, right? It's going to answer my questions. But more importantly, if I fill out a form, because yes, I am interested in learning more about this community, Kit is going to start interacting with me. Kit's going to send me an email or a text if I've opted in. And again, it's after hours, so there's a very good chance that's when I want to continue the conversation. So that was, again, a big part of why we adopted that tech. And it's definitely been a beneficial for us and all of our communities.
We have had some of our on-site staff say, oh yeah, when a prospective resident has talked to Kit, they will come in and ask for Kit. Because the conversation is so real that they don't, prospect doesn't know that it's an AI tool. Have you felt that, the amount of prospects that you were able to nurture increased because of using this like AI tool? And the second question is, has that also reduced some of the burden, or were you able to reduce some of the on-site staff because of this tool?
Oh, two very different questions. I'm going to start with the second one because it's the shortest answer. From my experience, I'm not heavily involved in the payroll side of our communities. But in my experience, in what I've heard, that has not been the role for Marcy, and for any of our executive team and our operations team. Obviously, there is a benefit especially when you talk to, when you look at budgets and everything, there's a benefit from being able to utilize tech to do some of that job. But I view the VLA as somebody that works, or a tool that works in tandem with our leasing team. It is not replacing our leasing team. And I, better than anyone, can tell you all of the reasons why not, because it's my job to make sure I know when things go wrong, so I can figure out a way to stop those. And at the end of the day, things go wrong. It's still a technology, right? So no, it has not replaced that job. So I think that's important to say. But what it has done is it has allowed our team members to focus on what we want them to focus on, right? Which is leasing. And over the years, one of the things I remember being the most surprised about when I started in this industry is how many technically roles a property manager and a leasing consultant takes on. In my industry, in digital marketing at an agency, there's an entire person dedicated to social media. That's what they do. And so we, but that's something we ask our team members, and we want them to work with the existing residents, and we want them to make sure that they, keep up with marketing efforts offsite. And there's just a lot of different things. So I view the VLA, I view Kit as somebody that can help take off some of those lead nurturing efforts, specifically for somebody that maybe isn't quite ready to convert into that tour, that person who said, okay, I'm looking into the application now, I have more specific questions. They're still wanting to know about the pet policy, or do you have a pool? So anyways, that's how I view VLA. I think RKW, one of the number one things that we learned and really have continued to talk about with our clients as well internally is what Kit has done in terms of lead nurturing, like KPIs, right? One of the big things that is so important to RKW is making sure that we're responding to every single lead that comes our way, that it's done in a timely manner. And one of the things that we did in 2023 was essentially a case study. And we were actually able to test 2 sister properties in the same submarket, offering very similar, if not, the same, because literally sister properties, product type. We launched them on our CRM platform at the same time. But for the first 60 days, actually 90, I apologize, 90 days, one of the communities had VLA turned on and one of them didn't. And we were able to learn a lot from that. Number one, just some of the basic things, 100% of people that contacted the property after hours, the one that was using VLA, got a response. And I know that sounds like, so, well, yeah, of course it did. But if you didn't have a virtual leasing assistant, that wouldn't be the case. All of those leads that came in would be on the docket for the next morning for the leasing team. The other thing that we really were excited about and was how many of the tours that were scheduled at the community were actually scheduled by Kit. It was about 26% of the total amount of tours scheduled in those 90 days was Kit's doing, because that's what it's driving towards. It's driving towards that conversion point. And then again, there was a boost. Another KPI we really noticed was a boost in our, tour to lease conversion. So those tours that Kit was responsible for generating, 50% of those tours, there was a 50% boost at the community that Kit was enabled at from the tours to then lease. So again, it was something that we were really excited to be able to measure and then prove out what that the value of Kit.
No, it's very helpful. We, similar to what you said, we found the same thing where it's not meant to reduce the on-site staff, but then it helps them focus more with, the on-site day-to-day operations, or, the face-to-face meetings with prospects and the residents. So we just look at it as like an extension,
Yes,
right, to the staff.
100%. It is definitely extension. I love that you said somebody would go in and ask for Kit. That makes me laugh. But I do think that they work hand in hand, right? And that's an important part of making sure that I stay on top of that, right? Because as one of the things that I've noticed about Kit, and I got to give a shout out to our CRM company, Funnel Leasing, since we've adopted or, took on their platform, they've done a lot of development work on their AI tool. Because of that, it's meant that we have to understand and get better about all of the information we make sure AI that Kit has available to it. Right now, that's one of the number one things that I'm really thinking through. How do we ensure that all of the information Kit and really any of our automated communication, right, is utilizing? How do we make sure that that is updated and it continues to stay updated? And a big part of that goes back to making sure all of our systems talk to each other, and that there is, that understanding of where that data should come from first and foremost.
Excellent. Yeah, that makes sense. I kind of love how you mentioned how, the on-site staff at a property really does have a lot of roles that a lot of times you wouldn't anticipate. Just today I was talking to one of our community managers first thing in the morning in regards to hiring and interviewing that she's currently doing for an open position. Then we touched base on some occupancy, leasing fundamentals, collections. And then later in the day, we had an inspection from something we're working on that came up, and I needed her to go take 3 random measurements in a certain unit and on some other spots of the property, right? So that's all in the course of what should be, essentially an 8-9 hour workday, which wouldn't actually allow her, if she's working on all these different things, to truly focus on what matters most, which is leasing, collections, and overall resident satisfaction. So I like how you mentioned that it really can alleviate that burden when utilized correctly.
Yeah, I also think in a way that we've had, you want to start thinking about the roles of the leasing team a little bit differently. I think KIT absolutely helps alleviate some of it, but there are going to be times, like you said, where they can't do it all, especially for some of our lease ups. So I've noticed that we actually have adopted, we have, our property managers, our APMs, our leasing consultants, but you'll see some communities have leasing managers. Their job 100% is to be working in the CRM, following up, nurturing those leads, working that leasing funnel. And again, it allows, them to really utilize that platform, get to know it really well. And they tend to be like big touch points for me, how, talking to them, getting their feedback. But yeah, I think we have to just be very, very aware of all of the things we ask of them, not on top of the fact that we also ask them to report out on data on a regular basis, because understanding performance is super important. So just remembering that, at least that's for me a big part of when I'm thinking about our tech stack, or when I'm thinking about my job on a regular basis. The people that utilize the tools I'm responsible for are a big part of my everyday thought process.
Absolutely. And that makes a lot of sense. That's a good position for your role to be in, is to keep those folks in mind.
I do.
Yeah. So kind of leading into that, how you discussed, thinking of the different roles of the leasing team. Can you discuss a little bit about the impact of tech, like on rents or pricing strategies at different properties?
So again, that's kind of a realm that I'm very happy to say I get to stay out of when it comes to pricing and that strategy, the strategies there. That is our amazing operations team, and obviously, they're very good at what they do. They do use tech and platforms, right? There's predictive analytics that are involved, and AI revenue management tools. I think is something that everyone in the industry has heard a little bit about. It differs for us though. There's not I think that's the one aspect, like revenue management is actually not part of the standard tech stack that we really will tell every client, like, we recommend you have this, because it really is going to be, at least in what I've heard communicated, right? It's not going to work for everybody. It's not going to be for everybody. In fact, I think it's really rare for our lease up communities to utilize a revenue management tool. So from a pricing strategy standpoint, I still very much have that marketing mindset of like, I'm not getting involved in that. You let me know when you have a loss leader. You know what I mean? Like there is a little bit, I get to be hands off with that. So.
That actually
Cool.
what you said, just for audience to know, the reason why you wouldn't use that on a lease up is because a lease up will generally have pricing well below the market. And if you're following your AI tool or revenue management, they're going to say you should actually be priced a lot higher. But the lease up strategy is you want to get as many leases as possible. And the big way to do that is to lower your pricing. So I could see why in that instance, they wouldn't want to use something like that.
Yeah. I also think it's a huge focus every single day, right? I mean, whether it's, you're really below market or not, but I feel like our lease ups, it's a constant, keeping your eye on where can you be with rents in terms of in the market. Specifically, I feel like for me, a lot of it is like the concession aspect of it. What is everybody else doing? How much do you have to meet all of the other communities to still be competitive? And in most of the markets that we are located in, right now the supply is outweighing the demand. It's just been that way for, I'm going to say a year. I could be off on that. I will tell you that it's absolutely impacted marketing in a way, but I know it's definitely impacted the pricing strategy and what our lease ups are experiencing. So again, but we've always been like that. Like since day one, lease ups with a revenue management tool, just that's not the norm. It's more of a hands-on
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, which that makes sense. And, Puja and I in asset management, we do have the opportunity to work with AI revenue management quite extensively. I
Mhm.
probably look at it on a daily basis at our different
Mhm.
properties. And I do love, what it does from a standpoint of, hey, you could lease at 1800, but instead, if you leased at 18 or 1790, your revenue actually is going to be greater by X percentage because you're avoiding some vacancy. So there are really good factors there. But yeah, from a lease up perspective, doesn't make a ton of sense.
100%. Yeah, I know that I think there's a little bit of a difference. I know that AIRM, which is the big one, I think that everyone, that Real
Mhm.
Page is, if you are a Real Page person, I feel like you've got to be familiar with that title, AIRM. That is a daily thing. I feel like LRO was maybe every week, but again, I'm speaking as someone that has
Yeah,
witnessed this versus dealing with it on an everyday basis. But yeah, I think that was actually the first, when I got into this industry, the first time I ever heard anyone say AI about, in terms of multifamily, was about revenue management.
yeah, yeah. And like you touched on, from my little experience, AI revenue management is very optimal because it is daily, where LRO, more outdated products are kind of fluctuate on a weekly basis. But as we know in multifamily, from anyone working from marketing, asset management to onsite, things change by the hour. So it's good to always be on your toes from that standpoint.
100%. Yeah, yes.
Mhm. Awesome. Well, I'll pass it off to Puja for the next question.
Yeah, so you mentioned quite a bit of the lead generation, and then currently with like where supply is at, it's a little bit more difficult, right? We're all competing for the same pie. So what have you seen to work well with like advertising? Have you seen people also, two-part question, right? One with advertising and tech, and then have you seen just recently, just talking about like the recent market, people changing their advertising budgets to just compensate for what's going on in the market today?
Whew, we could talk about this for hours. Yes, to both questions. So I think when it comes to the marketing funnel, we work with some fantastic agency partners that really focus on multifamily. And I have found, even though my background is like digital marketing, like being at an agency, I have found that it's helpful to work with agency partners and somebody that just understands multifamily intimately because of all of the laws that are involved in marketing and advertising, what you can and cannot do. It's very unique. One of the, a lot of the go-to tactics in terms of targeting and audience and demographics is not something we could do or want to do. So anyways, we have a lot of agency partners that we work really closely with to understand what tech is being utilized outside of just the standard, right? Like we know you're running digital ads. We know you're working in a Google Ads platform, but what about the PMAX campaigns that Google Ads released, I don't know, a couple of years ago, and we just started utilizing them more heavily in 2023. What about that is beneficial? Because Google has so much first party data or first person data, and they understand the users. How can we use that to our benefit, but also not to our detriment, not breaking any laws? So it's been really important for my team to understand what our agencies are doing. Also on the other side of it in terms of like the budget, right? So the expense, the spend that really drives all of those different campaigns and what we were just talking about to generate those leads. Yeah, they've I would say one of the most common conversations we're having to have right now is the not just the market in terms of supply and demand, but literally the amount that you have to spend to get one lead has increased. because as you can imagine, there's more people out there that we're competing with for a smaller pool of people. And also, a lot of the product is like you were saying, like with the lease ups and everything, they're all kind of in the same place in terms of rents and concessions. Obviously the job of marketing is to make your product stand out, and that's an important part. But it's been you just be trying to be as transparent as possible about the reality of the market impacting your budget. And then the other thing about multifamily is a lot of times we budget so far in advance, really far in advance. That was another thing that was massively confusing to me when I first got into this industry, right? I was literally used to somebody giving me a month to month budget. Like every month we're going through to talk about approvals. For us, we're looking at a year-long budget that first gets written the July before, you know what I mean? So long story short, it's just understanding that 2023, or when a budget was written at the beginning of 2023, where we are now, what our expectations were, like that year over year expectation, it's just not valid. So again, yes, we found that we're all having to have a lot of conversations around, you do need to spend more to get the same amount, which is also why it's been so important for us to work with our vendor partners and understanding what's the best approach to these different ad campaigns, and how can we use tech in an appropriate way to our advantage.
So you said something about budgets that we were talking about earlier, is that people don't allocate enough technology, right?
Yeah.
To their budget, which is part of the mission that, RKW has with their tech stack, is
yes.
Owner operators need to allocate more technology. And it might sound counterintuitive because you obviously want to be as lean as possible, right? You want to improve your NOI, but really the technology will help, optimize your operations.
Yes. I realize that when you look at a budget on average for one of our communities, it's not small. It takes a lot of money to run one of our communities, right? I get that. I also am very aware that my team, the digitals team, expense tends to be one of the largest in the budget, right? But when you think about the tech part of this, what blows my mind is I think we talk about tech and prop tech more than anything else. I feel like AI is what everyone talks about. Predictive analytics, you hear a lot of people talk about that. Centralization and how you can use different platforms to implement a centralization plan. All of that is tech, but that same thought process and conversation isn't being applied to the budget. So it's been a big step forward for RKW. We actually started doing it at back in 2022, where we're talking to our clients about how next year's budget is going to include a tech stack. And these are all the different products we're recommending and why. And a lot of it also is continuing to build on that, but explaining what the new tool is going to do and benefit. And I get it. I understand adding additional costs to a budget is probably can be really frustrating, especially for somebody that maybe doesn't fully understand the purpose of it. So a big goal for me and other people at directors at RKW right now is, how do I develop a talk track? How do I develop a summary to help people understand that? So in budget season, it's not just arguing about the additional dollars that are being added, but it's actually speaking to the importance of why, right? So making sure that we have that full understanding of what that new tech is all about, and being able to put it into specific terms for maybe that community, that asset, that submarket.
That was very helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
No, that is, from our standpoint too, Puja and I, when we do budgets annually every year, it's always helpful to understand the big picture, the ROI, and it's say, okay, you could leave your marketing budget as 5, but if you do 6 and you add X tool, here's the return that it can generate to help the property operate more efficiently. So I like how you mentioned that. That's really helpful from our side as owner operators to understand that.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. That's definitely the idea, right? I'd like to think that you guys feel very similar to budget season that we do, right? There's so much information being given to you. I mean, we're going back and forth about so many different things. So I think just the thought process of making sure that what we bring to the table, we are able to explain, but also build value for, I can understand how that's beneficial to both sides.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing worse than paying for something when you don't exactly understand what it's doing or the value. So always that education, for ourselves and for prospects, potential clients, whatever it may be, is always super important.
Yeah, I'll keep that in mind. I definitely.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. So maybe as we kind of get close to the end here, I just am curious what advice you would give to real estate operators who are looking to incorporate tech into their marketing strategies for the first time.
Sure. I think what I see happen a lot, and this is not necessarily a bad thing. It's the reality of where our industry has been for the past couple of years. There's so many companies offering technology. Like the amount of prop tech companies versus like management companies is insane. So what I see happen a lot is our clients might have been approached by a prop tech company, or they might have been utilizing a technology or a tool with another management company. And they'll come to us and they'll say, I want to use this. The advice that I would give, and I do give on a regular basis, is okay, I totally understand. Well, no, actually, what I say is, okay, help me understand your thought process, right? Before implementing any type of tech, you have to understand what it's supposed to do, not what it's telling you it's going to do. And then what value does that bring for the community? What is it replacing? What I've realized a lot of times is not everything is fully manual. I mean, again, we've talked a lot about how maybe multifamily is a little bit behind the times, but there's probably some type of software or tool currently being utilized to do that. What process is currently in place? And is this going to work in tandem with it? Is going to completely replace it? It's having a conversation about the purpose of the tool and then being open-minded to the fact that it might not be the right fit. I think that what I have found myself, I'll go into it with a client. They'll come to us with essentially a review management tool. And I'm great. I love that. Can I talk to you about the one that we utilize? Right? It's bringing awareness to the tools that maybe are being utilized behind the scenes that maybe our clients aren't aware of, because for whatever reason, we haven't had a chance to talk that through. So I would say this to our client, our owner operator, and I would say it to someone at a management company that was maybe in a position like I am, right? Where you're talking about new tech a lot. Always try to understand the purpose of it for the person that's asking about it or the team that's going to utilize it. And then the most important thing, at least in my world, is and then what? You sign a contract, and then what? How do you make sure that it's pulling data from your PMS system? How do you make sure it integrates with your email platform so that your teams aren't having to use two separate platforms to communicate with someone? From a calendar standpoint, how do you make sure that there's one solid calendar for the community, so that, again, they're not having to manage tours in one place and their own personal calendars in another? Don't get me started on telephony. How are all of these things going to play nice together? So yeah, I would say that to pretty much anyone that was considering a new tech tool. Why do you want it? What is it going to replace? And how are you going to measure that it's doing its job?
Yeah, no, that's excellent. That's very simple. I mean, like you mentioned, there's so much information, emerging companies, development within prop tech. I mean, I think Puja probably gets more than myself, but I think probably on average, I receive at least one email a day from some sort of prop tech company prospecting, advertising their potential services, right?
Yep.
And from my side, right, it's going to be different from what you see, and it's going to also be
Mm-hmm.
different from what the onsite team sees. So I think that is really good advice, just to understand what value does it actually provide, what processes is it replacing, and then can it actually be implemented? Because it's great to think of online leasing, right? And you can see, I mean, I could probably Google and find 50 different platforms for that, but then finding, the specific one for your property management company and all that entails. So
Yeah, I think, and honestly, I don't blame like I get the prop tech companies, like I get those same emails, right? Like
Oh,
years
for
ago,
sure. I'm sure you get more than me.
well, if you have tech in your job title, it's over, man. Like you're on every contact list. But I feel like I understand why they're reaching out and they want to get in front of you, is because a lot of these tools are cool. They are valuable. They do offer something beneficial. Which again, I realize why people do get excited about it and they want to learn more. But a lot of times, again, it goes back to, for multifamily, it's understanding that you're not just like deploying it to one team, right? Like there's multiple different teams of people that, even if you are just using it at one community, your corporate team has to understand this new platform and figure out how to be trained on it and understand how it works. Your on-site team needs to understand it. And then when you have new people come in, because that's going to happen, right? How are you going to make sure that they're aware? How are you going to keep track of this platform that one community uses and they're not on the rest of the tech stack? It's just all these like little things that I don't know. I feel really strongly about the fact that it makes more sense to think through some of what I think of as the basics of, again, kind of go back to what is it supposed to do? Why do you want it? What do you currently have in place? How's it going to work nice with others? That really will bring a lot of things to light. And if you know those things, the next part of the conversation with the vendor will go so much more smoothly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I think that's essential. And with just where we live in a world where we're constantly inundated with that information, it's really important to remember like those foundational steps, to actually implementing and signing a contract and utilizing technology. Well, I really appreciate it, Puja. I don't know if you have any additional questions for Sarah.
No, I think we're coming up on the hour, so we can wrap up.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I really appreciate it. I know, I think all of the questions were so insightful. It's not often that I get a chance to speak with somebody that maybe is on our client side and has a different point of view. And anyways, I really appreciated the opportunity to chat with you today.
Yeah, we really appreciate you as well. This has also been insightful for me. Now it's helped me open my mind a little bit and not just be incentivized to maybe complain towards marketing spends or different items I see added to a budget. So we really appreciate you, Sarah. We really enjoy working with RKW and enjoy their tech focus and platform. And thank you to our audience today.